And today's topic is going to be about the parent-coach relationship. And one of the things that I would like to highlight in this relationship is the importance of transparency in the communication. So frequency does matter. Once a year is not enough. Twice a year is not enough in my opinion, but it's to be as transparent as possible. And for me, transparency means simply telling the truth. So even if it doesn't sound good, even if it makes you look bad, or even if it exposes a shortcoming of your coaching or even your personality, to be transparent about that and to have the intention of educating your parents about what you know about the game, about what you're learning, so they can better make educated decisions. So for me, the main reason why I want to be transparent is because I want parents and players that believe in my system. So by me being transparent, I weed out the people who don't fit. The less transparent I am, when it comes down to tough decisions that parents and players have to make, if you haven't been transparent, you'll have people who have all these different beliefs, and you will lose people that you thought were on the same page as you because you were so vague and you are not transparent. And if you are a coach who goes through the ups and downs of development, because there are periods where you're not going to win, you're going to lose. Sometimes it's going to look like you're winning and then you're going to start losing again. And parents are going to be confused because many parents, although they say they want development, what they actually want is winning. Winning is a priority over development. So in order to get rid of the parents that do not fit with my philosophy from the very beginning, I make sure that I am transparent with that parent before they even join my team. And then I regularly display this transparency throughout the year to give parents a chance to leave if they do not resonate with my message. And I do this because it gives me a better ability to know who is in this for the long run and who isn't. Now I'm going to explain the benefits of transparency, because you may think, oh, being transparent, I'm going to lose people. I would say that if you are in this for the long term, and I would say 5+ years for a team, transparency is the best way to go, because you will have parents who are with you for the long haul. So it's kind of like you got to think long term. You can't just think about 6 months from now, 1 year from now, next week, next month. For me, because we're dealing with kids, particularly in my case from 6 and up, my thing is having them as long as possible. Now, if you're coaching maybe 16, 17, 18-year-olds, maybe the transparency is not as important to you, because if you lose your team in 6 months or a year, or half your team, for example, there's not much time to build on that. But in my case, that's not the case. But as far as the benefits of transparency, one obviously is that it builds trust and it builds credibility. So when you expose your shortcomings or things that you're learning, things that you did wrong in the past and that you will correct, what that says to parents is that I know the intention of this coach. I know that I am not just being told things that I want to hear, but I'm being told the truth as he perceives it. And one of the worst things as a coach and a parent too is when someone has to make assumptions about what you're doing and about what you believe. So in my case, being transparent, regardless of whatever I do, parents know the intent of what I'm doing. They're not guessing and having their own assumptions, because they already know where I stand on that because of my transparency. And the trust and credibility is such a big factor, because when you make a mistake, they are more forgiving because they know your honest intentions. And intentions, I don't think you can just write it and that's it. Intentions has to be something that you follow through every time in your training. So if you say, oh, I made a mistake here, this is my shortcoming, and when you go out on the practice field, you never show any indication of change over time, then that's not going to mean much. So as far as the transparency, it's not just in your communication, but it's how you address and translate what you learn through that communication and apply it as you're building these relationships, not just with the parents, but also with the players as well that you interact with. And again, just going back to another benefit, aligning expectations, it helps you to know that the parents you have are in line with what you want. There's nothing worse than building up a team over a number of years, seeing average players or bad players become good and improve. And then when the time comes to make a decision because you are in a rough patch developing players, to have several of your top players leave because you were not clear in what your intentions were. You could have weeded those players out at the beginning, brought in players who bought into your vision, and you could have developed those players. So in a sense, it's kind of like a loss of investment because you're investing in people who don't even believe in your vision, leaving you in a vulnerable spot when you're a coach. And we know of so many coaches who have lost teams after having those teams for a number of years because they thought that parents who believed in their vision, when it comes time to make a decision, ended up leaving the team, put them in a rough spot. Everyone left, and now they don't have a team. So that's one of the another benefits of this. And then the last benefit that I have is enhancing player development through clear goals and feedback. So in this case, when you have parents who are on board with what you are doing, they are also able to participate in the process of player development. Simple example, if I am a coach and I say, hey, I don't believe in telling players what to do when they're on the field, they need to have the autonomy and make their own decisions. And you explain the benefits of this, and then you also show that in your coaching. Then when you have parents who believe in your vision, regardless of how it seems at the time, even when kids are doing things that don't make any sense at all, but you're still not telling them what to do and they're not getting the results, as opposed to maybe a coach telling every player exactly what to do and they win because they're playing based on how the coach wants them to play. So they'll get the results. But a benefit of having parents who believe in this is that you will not have parents who scream on the sidelines telling players what to do every time they get the ball. So now you don't have to worry about, oh, I got these kids over here, they care too much about what parents say, and they're going to play according to what the parents are shouting on the sideline. And you can mitigate and eliminate those conversations because of this transparency and knowing that the parents that you coach actually believe in your vision. So in my case with the kids, I don't even have this issue at all. I have zero issue with parents screaming from the sidelines because I've done so much vetting throughout these years that if you don't believe in my vision, you're gone anyway. So that's another huge benefit of being transparent. The next question is then, how can you effectively educate parents? And I try to do this through as many ways or means as possible, not just through one way. I love messaging and emailing parents based off of an application that I use to help manage practices and games and other things that I want my parents to know about what I'm doing and my intentions. But I do this through an app called Play Metrics. Every time I learn something new, every time I reflect on what I was doing and it's something that I need to make a change in or my plans going forward, I do this through that application. So they get a notification in the application, and they get a notice in the email. So this is one way of doing it. And sometimes I'll even send videos in that email as well. However, I know that not all parents are going to read those emails. So I also like to do in-person meetings. I have parent meetings, and I'll try to have a parent meeting maybe once every 2 months, once every 3 months, but sometimes I'll do 2 meetings in a month. Sometimes I'll do maybe 5 meetings in 3 months, but I try to keep the meeting periodically. And when I do have these meetings, it's not superficial. It's very deep about my philosophy and where I want to go. So every meeting I have, regardless of what it's about, I always bring back, okay, this is why I'm coaching. This is my philosophy. This is what I believe in. And obviously, when people are in person, it's very difficult for them to ignore the message. And then what I also do in these meetings is that I encourage parents to question things that they have. So, or question things that I've talked about. So when the meeting is done, I always ask, do you have any questions? And if they don't have any questions at that meeting, I will even say, if you don't want to address anything here, text me or call me, and then I will address your meetings personally, one-on-one. So it doesn't always have to be within the group meeting. It can be one-on-one. And I always say that every meeting, as often as I can, I always say, remember, any questions you have, please come to me. I say that every time. And another good way to even take things another level as well, so that it's not just the parent, is to have one-on-one meetings with the parent and the player. So this is something that I just started doing thanks to another coach. I got to give her the credit. But this helps me to understand, not just, like I said, not just the parent, but also the player. I can get into the head or the mind of the player to see where they are at. And then in this case, ideally, you have the mom and the dad, not just one parent asking questions. And really, this meeting is more so for them to give their perspective. Less for me. I will give my perspective, but really this meeting is about them, anything that they want to say to me. So I make it, I wouldn't say mandatory, but I send out a sign-up sheet for parents to sign up and have these one-on-one meetings. Again, I don't say mandatory, but if you don't sign up, I'll message you again and ask you, please, can you do this one-on-one meeting? So those are some ways that I educate parents as often as possible. And I try to do it, again, through as many ways as possible. And then now I'm going to go into more real world examples of this transparency. So one of the things I think is very, very important, which seems obvious, is to manage expectations around playing time. So I would just do this right up from the jump. I wouldn't even try and get away from questions that parents have like this, or try to skid around it, or tell parents what they want to hear. You be completely honest about this, because there are going to be times where you're going to be in a tough game, and maybe not everyone is going to get the same amount of playing time. Maybe there's some other reason. Maybe you want to test something out, and maybe certain players aren't able to maintain that level. So one of the things that I really try to do when possible is I remind parents, I will make mistakes. I am still learning things. I still have adjustments to make. Just because I say something today doesn't mean in 3 months I'll have a different perspective. So I try to have parents understand this as well, that I am not perfect. I will make mistakes and things will change. And another thing, as far as a real world example of this effective transparency, is handling constructive feedback from parents. And a lot of coaches I know, they're like, I don't want to hear anything from parents. I don't want to hear anything. But for me, even though a parent may not necessarily know anything about soccer, we do have to remember that a huge part of coaching is not just the soccer part, it's also the people part. So maybe a parent knows something about a kid, and it'll help you manage the kid better, or manage the team better. Because you can be a coach and know everything. You can know all the drills, you can know all the perfect drills, you could have traveled all the world and known everything. But if you are not a good teacher and you cannot manage kids well, then whatever you know is going to be irrelevant, because players will not want to play with you, parents will not trust you, and you won't have a team. So communication and relationships is as important, if not even more important, than the soccer itself. which is why you can have so many bad coaches coaching teams for a long time, because they know the communication and the relationship part of the process. And that in probably in youth soccer, especially at the younger ages, it trumps even what you do in soccer. So that's very important. So whenever you get criticism from parents, for me, I like to be open and I like to hear them out. And I'm not one that's going to shun them away. If they have questions, I answer them again as honestly as possible. I don't tell them what they want to hear. I'm as transparent as possible. Simple example. I coach a 2017's team, 6, 7, 8 years old. They might be 7, 8 years old, turning 8 this year, I believe, for some of them. And one of the questions of one of the parents was, are we going to go 7v7? And he had his points. He coaches a rec team. And I'm also familiar with these points because I know in America, everyone wants to rush to 7v7 when they're 5 years old. So I'm very aware of this, but I'm like, no, we're going to do 4v4. And this is why, these are the reasons why we're going to do 4v4. So I don't just tell them no, and I don't just tell them we're going to do 4v4. I'm going to tell them the reasons why they do 4v4 and why I think it's better than doing 7v7 at this time. And I'll do it whether it's at a parent meeting with a lot of people or one-on-one. And then another thing is, and this probably goes into it as well, but ignoring or avoiding difficult conversations is not something you want to do. You want to have difficult conversations as often as possible. And this is just, again, a necessary to build trust and credibility. Now, having difficult conversations doesn't mean disrespectful, but parents need to know where you stand, why you stand there. And kids also need to know, I believe, that part as well. Obviously, you tailor it to them based on their age. You don't want them to internalize anything that you say the wrong way, but you definitely want to be open to having these difficult conversations. If there's a difficult conversation that you feel you need to tell someone, then have that conversation immediately. Otherwise, the problem will just drag on and it doesn't help anybody. And I'm going to give you an example of an email that I sent to some parents through the application that I use to help manage some of the things in my team. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I will post it so you can read it. I'll put it on this video, but I'm just going to read just a few sentences. So to start out, I say, parents, I write you just so you can do a bit more to evaluate a good coach when you see one. So here I'm basically letting parents know, hey, you have questions about me as a coach or another coach that you hear about? Well, here's something to help you know whether a coach is good or not, something to help you evaluate. And I come across this lesson as I critique my training today and see where I fall short. So I admit, hey, I fall short. After every training, I review every training, see what I did well and see what I didn't do well. And I was aware of this before, but I didn't really internalize and reach a point of clarity until I wrote it down today. And then later, a few sentences later, I also wrote, this is what I wrote to myself that brought me more clarity about why I was getting frustrated while training my players. And this is what I told myself. I am still too concerned with getting my training plan done as opposed to looking at the needs of the players. This is why I become angry, because the kids are not understanding what I want them to do fast enough so we continue with the rest of my plan. And then I write in the next sentence, so as much as I talk about other coaches in America wanting to rush into the wrong things, which hurts player development, I also fall short in this area in other ways. That's what I wrote verbatim. So I'm also pointing out my hypocrisy. But then I'm also later in that statement, or in that email, I also note my willingness to change and how I will change this. So, and I am going to close this podcast off right now just to give you a reminder and just some encouragement of being transparent. Especially when you're coaching little kids, we have to remember, okay, what is our end goal? And as a coach, I think you have to ask yourself this. Am I a coach because of the income that I get? It helps me make a living. If that's your intent, then probably this isn't as helpful for you. If your main focus is to get an income, make a living through full-time coaching, transparency probably isn't the best thing. But if you're a coach and you have the end goal in mind of having players from a young age and developing those players through a long time, and not just coaching players for 4 or 5 years, you see better players, you get those better players, you release the players you've been developing. Again, if that's your strategy, you want to get players, better player comes, release the players you have, get those better players. Again, this is not the best strategy for you. And again, this is me just eliminating who this message is for. If your strategy is to get a group of kids when they're young and keep as many of them as possible throughout the whole development process, then this is what you want. Because through the ups and downs, when it comes to real development, because development is not a linear straight path, there's a lot of ups and downs. If that's what you want, this is the best path, is to be as transparent as you can with the players and the parents, and then tailoring your message according to the age. So obviously I'm not going to communicate in a or using certain language with 6 and 7 year olds versus 14-year olds, or even parents with 6 and 7 year olds versus parents that have 16 and 17-year olds. Clear example, if a parent has a 6-year-old, I'm probably not gonna bring up laziness. Laziness with 6 and 7 year olds probably isn't the case. It's probably focus. Whereas 15, 16, all right, you're getting close to being an adult, and you have a number of options now that your parents aren't telling you what to do. You're close to driving in some cases. This is where you have to be more transparent in terms of your language. Just an example. And other than that, guys, that's all I have for EvoToca. Stay tuned.